Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm JC. Today's video is a masterclass video. This was the last masterclass that I did the poll for on my community tab. So this was voted on by you guys, and you voted that you wanted me to do David Sedaris teaches storytelling and humor. So I'll admit that I did not know much about David Sedaris, or at least I didn't think that I knew much about David Sedaris going into this masterclass. And then I realized that I had read some of his narrative essays and his creative nonfiction. I mean, I knew who I was reading when I read it, but it's been a while, so I hadn't realized I had read some of his work already. And his sister is a comedy writer. You might know the name, the Sedaris name, Amy Sedaris. A whole family of comedians and comedy writers. And so I wasn't quite sure what I would get out of this class because I'm not a funny person. At least I don't consider myself to be a funny person. So writing comedy, never anything that entertained my mind. However, because I have essays that I want to write. I have a book that I'm working on that's a collection of essays which I would like to be more narrative nonfiction, like creative nonfiction. I would like them to be narrative essays. Like I'm telling a story, but they're still true. Not just spewing a whole bunch of facts about me, which, it's fine when people do that, but I don't want these to be that. And then I have the TV pilot that I want to write, and it's going to be mostly a drama, but I do want to add some bits of comedy and levity to the drama. So I was like, okay, that's what I'm looking for in this class. How can I add bits of humor into certain aspects of my writing for when I get ready to write those things? So that is what I took going into this masterclass that I wanted to get out of it. And I was pleasantly surprised. But I will let you know in the end my final thoughts on the other side of this video. But for now, this is my masterclass experience with David Sedaris teaches storytelling and humor.
You're so privileged to be a writer. Normal people, something bad happens to them and there's nothing they can do with it except feel bad or complain or press charges.
My next guest is an extremely funny writer who has sold over 10 million books worldwide, David Sedaris.
Sedaris has over 12 million books in print, 3 Grammy nominations, and was named Time Magazine's Humorist of the Year. But it's his colorful personal essays and scathing commentaries in The New Yorker, Esquire, and his appearances on NPR and the BBC that have inspired his devoted fan base.
I feel everyone has a story to tell. Everybody has an interesting story to tell. You just have to take a step back and look at your life, and there are all sorts of things there. I'm David Sedaris, and this is my masterclass. Everything's funny eventually. Sometimes it takes a while, but the day will come when you're able to laugh about anything. And so for me, I don't care to write something that's serious. I want to get laughs when I write something. I went to a doctor in London recently, and he said, "You have cancer." And this is before he'd done any tests. And he told me I had cancer, and then he stuck a flexible metal rod up the hole in my penis. And I thought, I can write about this. And I felt bad for people who aren't writers. I don't have cancer. He was completely wrong about that. So I got to write about that as well. As you get older, these things happen more and more often. You fall down and you think, well, okay, I can write about it. But I was very fortunate to be a writer, so I could write about it. I don't know what people who aren't writers do. You should celebrate if you get fired from a job, or if your house catches on fire, or you lose a limb that's not your writing arm. Make the most of it. A lot of people ask, what are your writing rituals? What do you do when you sit down to write every day? And every day I have a platter of lasagna on my would that be just the worst advice, to eat a platter of lasagna every day?
Maybe more.
I feel very grateful that I know a lot of funny people. My sister Amy is terribly funny. My sister Lisa is funny. I feel like most of my friends are funny. Hugh is not funny in the least bit, but he's a good straight man to play off of. So that's always a way to get laughs, is to quote funny people, right? Another way is to put yourself down, because you're allowed to insult yourself as much as you want. I think if you're making fun of yourself, everything's fair game. Exaggeration is a way to get laughs. When you're writing humor, it's just right there in your toolbox, and you're entitled to use it. My boyfriend Hugh grew up in Africa, and he was in Somalia during a coup, right? Riding in a truck with people shooting at him. Now, he's pretty lucky to have had that experience. He's not a writer, but that most people aren't going to have adventure like that in their life. I met a woman, and she said, I feel like we had the same father. And I said, was your dad cheap? And she said, my dad was so cheap that when I was in high school, people would roll our house, and he made us save the toilet paper and use it. And if it got rained on, he made us dry it out on racks. And then friends would come over, and we would have these hefty bags in our bathroom filled with this kind of weirdly textured, dried out toilet paper. And I thought, wow, I wish my dad had done that. It was such a great... Now, this person could have easily have said, oh, we grew up in the suburbs, and I don't really... My life is just, it's nothing you haven't seen on television. You just have to take a step back and look at your life, and there are all sorts of things there. Please don't feel like your life is meaningless, or that you're not special. You just haven't found it yet. Or maybe no one's recognized it in you yet. But it's not what happened in your life, it's how you write about it.
So the first lesson is just an introduction, but in the introduction, it gives you quite a bit. And he talks about, well, I'm not a humor writer, but he almost makes me believe that I could be. Because he talks about everything is funny eventually. And he talks about using the tragedies in your life and turning them into something that can make people laugh, which got me to thinking, because I've had lots of tragedies, and I'm just like, I got some material I could work with. And he talks about using difficult moments that we go through in life in your work, whether it be regular dramatic fiction, or in his case, because he writes satirical and humor pieces, making it funny. And he always talked about thinking that he feels bad for people who go through tragic things in life and aren't writers, because they have no outlet for where to put the tragedy at. And with writers, we get to put everything into our work, no matter what it is or what type of work we're working on. He also talked about being allowed to insult yourself, quoting funny people, and using exaggeration in, not lying per se, but just exaggerating the circumstances of certain things that you might have gone through, things that maybe you didn't think were quite so funny. If you exaggerate them a little, they'd be a little funnier and fit in a better narrative for the story you're telling. He says one thing at the end of the lesson. He says it's not what happened in your life, it's how you write about it, which I kind of loved. And I've never considered writing humor before, but he kind of makes me wonder if I could. And since I do have this project to write a TV script, which I'm hoping for it to be sort of a dramedy. Like, I'm not a humor writer, but I would like there to be some light, funny moments mixed in with the dramatic ones. So this class might be really good for me. Next lesson.
If you're tuned in, life feels like a story. I was in Australia, and I was with Hugh, my boyfriend, and I was with this Australian friend of mine. And we were riding in the car to a little town called Daylesford. And we got to Daylesford, and we were having lunch in this restaurant, and there was a kookaburra, the bird, out on the porch of the restaurant. And the server said, "Oh, do you want to feed him?" And then took me outside and gave me some raw duck meat. And I fed this kookaburra. And it just felt like a story to me. Like, sometimes your life feels like a story. And you have to kind of be tuned in, but every now and then, what your subject comes just right to you and sits in your lap. And if you're awake, you think, wow, there it is, right there, the thing to write about. And you pretty much guarantee that if you're sitting at home and you're just online all day, and then you leave your house and you're walking down the sidewalk and you're texting to your friends, and then you go to the grocery store and you continue to text while you're in the grocery store, that nothing's going to come and sit in your lap. You need to be in the world, and you need to be engaged with the world. And every now and then it comes to you. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. But again, you have to be open, and you have to be able to recognize it when it's given to you. How's your morning going so far? How's your trip been? Got any big plans for the weekend? These are questions. If it's a question you've heard in a hotel or a store, forget it. There's no place to go with those questions. That's some sort of small talk question. I like a question like, do you know many people in wheelchairs? Good question, right? And if people say no, I always say, well, do you have a ramp in front of your house? Do you know a lot of doctors? It's a good question. Because sometimes they can get people to say, well, I had appendicitis last year. Or, yeah, I just had a C-section. Sometimes I'll hear something that's just surprising to me or delightful to me, and I'll write it down. But I don't feel like, it sounds kind of cold, but, as a writer, you're sort of exploiting everybody you come into contact with. And that's not just me. It's part of the job description, really. I just wouldn't go through the line at the grocery store and not ask that person a question. I don't want to live in that world. I don't want to, I have friends who will be on their phone or texting somebody while they check out of the grocery store. And this one friend of mine, he said, this is my shield. It protects me from small talk. And I say, it doesn't have to be small talk. you can decide what it is. As long as I'm still having encounters with people, I want them to be meaningful to the extent that they can be. Another thing I find is, when you say no, everything shuts down. So I say yes a lot. I just encourage you to just, take a chance to do something that you wouldn't normally, and I don't mean like do something you'd normally never do, like water ski. Like, you don't say yes if someone you don't know says, if you're drunk and somebody you don't know says, come to my house. Yeah, I mean, you don't say yes to that. I just figured, you know what? If I live, I can write about it. That's how I've always thought.
In lesson 2, he talks about observing the world around you. He talks about being engaged in the world that you're in. It's like people who are always on their phones and they don't want to look up from their phone. They're walking on their phone, texting. They're in the grocery store on their phone, texting. He says you can't really be open that way. He talks about many moments where he's just been sitting, observing things around him, and I don't want to say stories kind of just sat and planted themselves in his lap, but like moments happened that wouldn't have happened if he wasn't paying attention to the things that were going on around him. And that made me think, because we're always, most introverts, because I'm an introvert, so I try to do things so that people won't talk to me. And he was talking about how that's such a closed off way of being. It doesn't allow for moments to just happen to you. And if you don't allow for moments to happen to you, you're provided with far less material to work with in your writing. Because a lot of what we write is about the stuff that happens to us. Even us fiction writers, we're writing fiction, but there's a little bit of truth and reality to the fiction. Some of, we might be elaborating on things that happened, but the things happened. And in order for things to happen to you, you have to be open for it to happen and, observe the things around you. And I am definitely one of those people in a grocery store who's on their phone, because I don't want people to talk to me. And maybe I should not do that quite as often. He also suggests ask better questions. He's like, there's a typical, how you doing? How's your day going? These are the normal, average, everyday questions. But ask the outrageous questions, the questions that lead to someone telling you stories about their lives, or lead to someone telling you, something that happened to them that you can use, or lead them to opening up the conversation with an outrageous question. I said say yes to weird experiences. And he said, don't ruin the moment. And what he meant by that was, sometimes he used an example of sometimes people assume things about you or whatever, and we're so quick to correct them. But if we let them kind of go off in their assumptions, it could provide us with material for story. Basically, he's always looking for materials for his work, and he kind of just lets things happen as they unfold. He doesn't another thing he said was, let people expose their true selves. And he, talked about people always made certain assumptions about him, things that could be further from the truth, but he would let them assume those things because it told him a lot about who that person was, and informed maybe a character that he ended up using in some material that he wrote that was based off of that experience. But without those experiences and just letting things happen, you don't get that material for your work. So, interesting lesson. Next one.
I used to write in the evening, and then I quit drinking. And when I quit drinking and I sat down in the evening, I thought, I don't know if I can do this because there should be booze on my table. So I thought, well, I'll change the time of day that I write because I'm not used to having booze on my table at 10 o'clock in the morning. So I started writing in the morning. And then eventually I was able to write in the morning and at night as well. So I usually get up and I go straight to my desk. And I start by writing in my diary, and then I turn to whichever essay I've been working on. I know for myself, it's very important to write every single day. I meet a lot of young writers who say, and I say, do you write every day? And they say, no, but just, I write when it strikes me. I don't know. I suppose that might work for some people. I'm not really the one to say, but it would never have worked for me. If so much happens by sitting at your desk, when you don't have an idea, so many things can happen, but they're not going to happen unless you're at your desk. So you need to sit there and not have the internet and see what happens. I've met so many people who say, well, I really want to write, but I work all day. So did I. You work all day and then you come home and you write. If it means that much to you, you're going to find the time to do it. That's never an excuse to say that you don't have the time. And there are a lot of people out there who are happy to give 10%, but I don't know any of them I don't know their names. Because they don't have books.
Okay, so lesson number 3 is on the subject of turning the things you observe into stories. And he talks about, he actually goes into his writing process more so than anything. And he talks about how, I guess he's observed, or over the years, he's observed that his process has changed, and where he used to be a night writer, although he was more of a drinking night writer, and he turned into more of a daytime writer, and then he turned into someone who could write at any point of the day, but it had to be at his desk. And he talked about you never know what you observe around you just sitting at your desk, but you have to be sitting at your desk to do the writing, to do the work, and put in the time and effort towards your craft. And he's like, sometimes you don't want to always be sitting at your desk. Inspiration isn't striking or whatever, but you never know what happens or what you can observe around you that will make you want to write something or inspire you to write until you park your butt in the chair at the desk, basically. And he said it's never, not having time is never an excuse not to write, and that if you really are dedicated to the craft of writing, you will find the time to write, whether it's after a 9-to-5 job, whether it's after working 10 hours a day. If writing really matters to you, you'll find the time to write and observe the world around you throughout your day, and that could inspire something for you to sit down and write in the evening. That's essentially what I got out of that class, that particular lesson. Yeah, next lesson.
My boyfriend, Hugh, is the most talented painter I've ever known, but he'll go to a museum and go to an exhibit and come home and say, I can't paint. And it's like, well, you can't paint like that person, but you paint like yourself. I think a lot of that has to do with needing to be perfect. And that's a real curse, needing to be perfect. I mean, you need to do the best that you can do. And then you need to take the best that you can do. And you need to rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it. Feeling the need to be perfect doesn't make you perfect. It just makes you paralyzed. So let go of that, because you're not going to be perfect. And if you're very lucky, you'll learn to be yourself. When you're in school, you're taught to have a topic sentence. So a topic sentence for a story like Understanding Owls might be, I don't know if you've ever tried to buy an owl, or it's not as easy as you might think to buy an owl. But I can't bear openings like that. And so I had to unlearn everything that I had been taught. Sometimes I kind of knock over here, and that doesn't let me in, and I knock over here, and that doesn't let me in, and I knock here, and that doesn't, and I cannot proceed with an essay unless I have an opening line that I feel confident to some degree with. I mean, it'll often change, but I can't get to the second sentence unless I feel sort of steady with the first sentence. And it can take days, it can take weeks, because your opening is going to determine your entire essay. You have to connect with people on some level, or they're probably not going to give you more than one shot. Right? They're probably not going to read more than one thing that you wrote if they can't connect with you. But it's interesting to read something and then ask yourself why you relate to it, right? What is it about this that touches me, or that has meaning to me? So how do you draw the line between being honest when you know that it will alienate certain people? That's beyond your control. The thing about writing, as opposed to speaking, is writing gives you the illusion that you're in control. And it's just that. It's just an illusion. You can write something and you think, well, I've explained myself, and now the reader will cut me some slack. But not necessarily. And it's important to let go of that illusion of control, because you don't want your writing to come across as defensive, and you don't want your writing to come off as over-explaining your position. I always feel like if you're writing humor, then you need to be harder on yourself than you are on everyone else. And that will always, people will tend to forgive you if you're making fun of yourself, if you're saying the bad thing about yourself before they even get a chance to say it. But I don't mean doing that in a false way, but being genuine about it. You can't write humor and not be able to laugh at yourself. It's not fair. It's like, when people say, oh, I've written a book, I've written my life story, but I don't read books. I don't like reading books. It's not fair to ask someone to read your book and when you're not going to read anybody else's book. And it's not fair to laugh at everyone else and not laugh at yourself. Often when I read out loud from my diary, people laugh, and then they don't remember anything anymore. I remember my sister Amy used to be at Second City, and I would go to her shows, and I would laugh and laugh and laugh, but when I left, I couldn't remember anything. So I feel like sorrow often gives weight to the humor and makes it more memorable. But you don't want to be formulaic about it because then it just becomes a gimmick and doesn't mean anything anymore. I think I'm naturally drawn to kind of what's sad or grim or depressing about something. And when I find it, and when I can put my hands on it and I can put it in an essay, those are the essays that people remember. And I want the essays to mean something. It's not always going to happen. There's nothing wrong with just laughing. But I think the difference is when I started out as a writer, I just wanted people to laugh. And then after a while, I thought, well, okay, I know how to do that. What if I try for something more? What if I try to move people in a way? What if I try to engage them in that way? I'm often asked what writers I admire, and there are any number of writers that I admire, but a person who really had a profound impact on me was Whoopi Goldberg. I love laughter that kind of turns around and becomes something else. I like a joke that becomes a finger that points at you. It's a worthwhile question. What kind of person am I? And I don't mean to be the kind of author that says to people, what kind of person are you? I don't want to be a scold. I don't want to be a nag. That's not my... But often I'm the one in the essay. I'm the example of somebody who was laughing and laughing, and then I realize, oh, maybe it's not such a joke after all. The danger is writing something that just stops instead of something that ends. I love a good 5-page essay. I love it when that works out. I recently started as a commentator on a show called CBS Sunday Morning, and I'm allowed to write about whatever I want. It can't be overtly political, but it can't be longer than 2 pages. And it's a really good assignment to write something that's 2 pages long that has an ending. 9 times out of 10, my only comment is you need to rewrite this 60 times. And most people, they don't even want to hear you need to rewrite it 1 time. But that's what writing is. It's rewriting. And sometimes something's not worth rewriting. You know, you think, oh, I'm just so bored with this. I can't bear to... It's not worth diving back into. And that's fine, because not everything is worth diving back into. But I would say what I personally like to do is learn as much as I can on my own, and then turn to my editor and then say, can you help me here? This is as far as I can have been able to take myself. I think if you read your essay over, it becomes pretty clear where you need to dig a little bit deeper. The hard part for me is I don't like writing about my feelings. I don't like hearing about people's feelings. I like hearing about people's problems. I'm happy to hear about anybody's problem. If somebody breaks up with somebody, I'm right there. All the details, delighted. There's a difference between digging a little bit deeper and using it to talk about your feelings, and digging a bit deeper and using it to touch upon a truth. Truth is different than your feelings. It's a truth about everybody. It's a truth about a human condition. There's a difference between emoting and finding the truth of the situation. And it's a difficulty for me.
In lesson number 10, he talked about his revision philosophy. Now, he is a person that drafts a lot. Before he sent it off to an editor, he talked about upwards of 18 to 20 drafts. I don't do that many. Before he would even send it to an other editor, but also he's also talking about shorts and short stories and essays. He doesn't, to my knowledge, doesn't write novels. So he mostly writes like narrative nonfiction essay style writing. So I imagine that would probably take a lot of drafts. Still, 18 is a lot. But he talked about writing being it more than just that first initial draft. That it's more in the rewriting of it all, the constant revision, critiquing of your own work before sending it off to an editor for them to critique. And he likes to have his drafts of whatever he's writing, like as far as he can take it. Um, he likes to take it as far as he can before he sends it off to whoever he chooses to edit it. He also talked about not overcrowding the story with too many characters, because if you have a short story or a narrative essay, you don't want too many people or too many characters or too many different things to pull the reader's focus out of the story and the actual message you're trying to convey within the essay or story. He talked about the difference between emoting emotion versus emoting to find the truth. The truths that you are presenting. And he's not a very emotional writer, is basically what he said. But he does want to evoke emotion from the readers who are reading his writing. So, and in terms of humor writing, he also talked about protecting his laughs, because he writes for certain publications that they do fact checking, even though I'm pretty sure, they should be aware that he writes humor, which is not always based in facts. But like for the New Yorker is like tirelessly fact checking his work, and he talked about some things where they're like, that couldn't possibly have happened that way, and he's like, look, you're gonna have to give me this one. It's for the laugh. Still want people to laugh, even though the subject matter might be something that you normally wouldn't laugh at. He likes to bring a little levity to his topics and things he writes about. So you have to protect the laugh. Next lesson.
I learned so much. I feel like most of what I know, I learned by going to people's readings and by taking part in readings. Nobody publishes a book without a dream. And the dream essentially is my life. I mean, it really is. I've sold 12 million books and published in 27 different languages. And I had absolutely, really nothing to do with that. I never sent a short story or an essay to anybody. I never went to a theater and said, can I read here? I never approached an agent about representing me. The only thing I did was I was reading out loud in class when I was in college. And it was a creative writing class, and I read an essay a short story that I had written. And somebody came up and said, I'm having a happening at my loft. This is how long ago it was. People used the word happening. I'm having a happening at my loft. Will you come and read something? So I went and I read something. And then somebody came and said, I'm having a bigger happening at my better loft 2 weeks from now. Will you read something? And I said, yes. But I made sure I wrote something new to read 2 weeks later. And then 2 weeks later I read, and somebody came up and said, will you read, we have a group of people, we're doing a reading, 5 people on the bill, will you be number 6? And I said yes, and I wrote something new to read there as well. I didn't want to be the person who, you read something and it works and then you drag it around. So my first book came out, and all my life, I know authors who say, oh my God, I have to go on a book tour. Ugh, I dread it. It's the worst. I could not wait to go on my book tour. Couldn't wait. I have a conversation with everybody who comes through the line. Also, another thing with the book tour is, and I thought everybody did this when I first started off, I write a letter to everyone who drives me. I write a letter to every bookstore. I write a letter to everybody who interviews me. A thank you letter. And I thought everybody did that. And I was really surprised to learn that hardly anybody does it. But it makes such a difference. It's really important to be polite. And it's really important to be kind to the people who bought your book. I understand if you're Michelle Obama and you've got thousands of people in line, you can't take the time to talk to every person. But for most authors, you're going to get to the bookstore and there are going to be 14 people there. And it's not going to kill you to talk to 14 people. It's really important to be good to people and to be nice to people, and it's important to trust people to do their jobs. It's really important. I know this sounds crazy, but it's really important to be a likable person. People like helping people. Let people help you. If you ask somebody for something or demand that they do something, you're not allowing them to help you. It's better just to present yourself, be the kind of person that somebody wants to help, and trust them to do their job. The most important thing for you is to develop discipline for writing, is to set a time and sit down and stay at your desk for a certain amount of time and then up it and up it and up it. Writing letters counts as writing. Writing emails doesn't. I can't tell you how many times I've been at my desk and I've just had nothing. And then I've looked out the window and I've seen something. Maybe it's just I'm watching birds fighting, and that can lead to something. But unless you're sitting at your desk, it's not going to happen. So you really need to develop that habit of sitting at your desk. And you need to keep in mind that as long as you're there, and as long as you do it every day, and as long as you read everything you can get your hands on, you are going to get better. Don't confuse publishing with writing. They're two completely different things. Let the world take care of the publishing part. That's not your job. I wrote every day for 15 years before my first book came out. That seemed normal to me. I throw away maybe a third of what I write. That's normal to me. Sometimes it's easy, but most times it's not. That's normal to me. It's not, every day isn't going to be a great day at your desk. That's normal. Nobody has a great day at their desk every day. You really need to get to work now. I don't mean to suggest that you weren't working before you started watching this, but, if I could do anything, I would just want you to know how possible it is. It's scary to say that you want to do something, but there comes a point when, if you're serious about it, then you have to say, at least to yourself, this is what I want. And then there are stakes. There are stakes involved, right? Because then if you don't get it, you have to think, okay, how do I deal with that? But you know what? if I can write 10 books, and if I can be in the New Yorker, and if I can have my own radio show on the BBC, anybody can. I'm not a naturally talented writer. I'm not. There are plenty of people funnier than me. There are plenty of people who are better storytellers than me. And I made it. And there's not a single day that I don't marvel at that. And I think, why me and not somebody else? But there's nothing terribly special about me. I don't look special. I can't believe I'm on the radio with this voice. I would suggest to anybody, the second this is over, to read The Getaway Car by Ann Patchett. It is the best essay I've ever read about writing. And it's from starting to write to having a book published. Everything. She covers everything in that essay. And I read it over just because it so inspires me. It inspires me to be a better writer. And it reminds me of the joy of writing as opposed to having a deadline, as opposed to having to go over, edits again with, a line editor. It just reminds me of how lucky I am and how lucky you are just to be interested in writing and to want to do it and to try and to fail. I divide the world into two groups of people, right? There are those who pay someone to listen to their problems. And there are those who get paid for telling people their problems, right? I am very fortunate to be in group number 2. And there's a spot here waiting for you when you're ready. When you're ready, I've saved a spot right next to me for you. I can't wait to hear about everything that's gone wrong in your life.
And there you have it. That is the wrap up of my masterclass. I enjoyed this class. I'm going to be honest and say that it's not my favorite. I didn't get as much out of this class as I would some of the others because they're more geared to what I write more often. Having said that, knowing that I would like to push the boundaries of my writing and be able to add bits and moments of levity into, like, if I want to delve into television writing, I know that I don't want to do straight. I can do straight drama. I'll probably be better at that. But what I'm working on currently, I do want bits of levity and small bits of comedy in it, like a dramedy sort of thing. Mostly drama, but a little bit of funny. And so, being as though I am not a comedy writer or a humor writer, or at least I don't consider myself to even be that funny, I did take away some bits and some things that he imparted, and mostly how to use the experiences of my life in ways that can make people, I don't want to say laugh, because some of the things I've been through weren't really all that funny, but I can look back on them now and see certain things that I can pick out of those moments that I can lighten up and bring some levity to those moments. And he taught me something about using the tragedies and experiences of your life to be able to influence your writing better, which, it influences my fiction writing, because you haven't noticed, I write a lot about traumatic relationships between mothers and daughters. Probably because that's my experience. It's traumatic relationships between mothers and daughters. But I think when you get more into essay writing, which is something I want to write, and even maybe short stories, television writing, which I definitely want to, kind of dip my toe in. Sometimes it gets a little murkier trying to use your life experiences in those scenarios, and you sometimes don't think it can be done, but or that you might not have enough to add. And he kind of really showed me that, boy, do I have a lot to add. But I enjoyed his class. It's not one of my favorites, but so I want to be honest about that. But if you're a person who writes humor, if you're a person who writes comedy or wants to write comedy or wants to infuse comedic, or wants to infuse comedy into their writing, and maybe do some comedic tones in your writing, this could be a really good class for you to take. I would recommend taking this class, particularly if that is your niche or genre that you want to write in. Even if it's not, I think it can help influence certain tones in your writing, that you might not have even realized needed the influence. But with that said, that wraps up David Sedaris Masterclass. The next masterclass is going to be Amanda Gorman, writing and performing poetry. I'm really excited about that class. And after that, I don't know which one is going to be the one after that, but we'll figure that out. That's going to be it for this video. If you like what you see and you want to see more videos from me, make sure that you hit the like and subscribe button. I post videos on Mondays and Thursdays. I live stream on Wednesdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As per usual, if you would like to be supportive in any of my creative endeavors, such as my blog, my online magazine, my online store, my online rap bubble shop, my Ko-fi page, and also now my Patreon, all of those links can be found in the description box below. Until next time, have a blessed day. Bye.